sponsored by Dennis J. Courtney, M.D., Director of the Courtney Medical Group, located at 3075 Washington Road in McMurray, Pennsylvania. For more information or to make an appointment, call 724-942-3002. That's 724-942-3002 for Dennis J. Courtney, M.D.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to AM Impact on Your Health. AM Impact on Your Health, where every day our goal is to have you learn at least one thing to help you live better and longer. AM Impact on Your Health, heard each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 9 o'clock. I'm Dr. Dennis Courtney, and I'm with you each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 9. AM Impact on Your Health, where each day you'll find current medical news, knowledgeable guests, fascinating health topics, and where we do encourage you to call in to join in. Today, well, it's a Monday morning version of the show. We're back from a weekend. I have just spent 2 days with a class of 200 taking a hunter's safety education course. A lot of kiddies in there. What energy spills off of those kiddies? And a lot of dads, too, and moms. And I'm ready to be back in civilization again, all the way up in, do you know where Apollo is? Well, what a beautiful country that is. Nice to be back in my comfortable surroundings. Today, we're going to be with a very special lady. I had her book on my possession this past week, and I just could not put it down. During the course, after the course, while back at the hotel, name of Faye Hueston, written a book. It's a medical thriller, ladies and gentlemen. I tell you this because I look at this from a doctor viewpoint, but I'm guessing a patient would look at it the same way. Each page you turn to has another aspect of a puzzle that all forms the puzzle for this particular lady and solves that puzzle. Silent enemy, environmental illness, and one woman's search for a cure. I'm going to be talking to Faye Hueston, the author of that book, and whose life's saga was detailed in that book. She kept a very accurate diary. She has put everything down to print. We're going to see what we can draw out for you. If you have any inclinations toward the alternative, this woman is the poster child for all of alternatives. She's done it all. We're going to be talking about a lot of what she has done and what she felt benefited her during our discussion today. Ms. Faye Hueston, Silent Enemy, our guest today. If in the course of our discussion with Ms. Hueston, you'd like to call in to ask a question or make a comment, the number, as always, will be 412-825-6262. That's 412-825-6262. Environmental illness at its epitome. Now, coming up the remainder of this month as it moves and clips along, on Wednesday we'll be with Dr. Gregory Smith, a colleague anesthesiologist from L.A., who runs a very large pain clinic in L.A., uses an approach he calls NESP, N-E-S-P. I'm going to let him describe it. Also, too, very much involved with addiction. So many patients who are chronic pain patients succumb to narcotic addiction, and he utilizes a program to get people off of those kinds of drugs. We'll talk about that. He is also a proponent and a very much a devotee of the use of the matrix, which is really how he got hooked up to begin with, through the help of Dr. Peter Beltran, who we had on last month, and is the CEO and the manufacturer of Neuromed, the name of the equipment used to deliver matrix treatments. Anyway, that's on Wednesday. Then next week, we'll have Peter DeWitt with us, written a book called Recall Healing. Heal Thyself, Transform Your Life, Transform Your Health will be the topic for next Wednesday. And we'll have a bunch of opportunities in between to talk about many of the guests we've already had on this month, those that are up and coming, and anything that's on your mind. We'll have a number of opportunities as it stands right now for open phones. Looking forward to being able to have the opportunity to hear from you. You certainly let me have it on Friday. I really enjoyed the show. Many of the things that I promise I'll get to, I will get to them, and we'll have a discussion of many of those items in the up and coming future. I'll try to get some expert guests on with respect to all those requested topics. So there you have it. I want to get to our special guest today as soon as possible. The medical thriller has so many aspects that I'd like to get into. I think that we'll definitely be able to occupy the remainder of the hour. Her name is Ms. Faye Hueston. She written the book, Silent Enemy, Environmental Illness and One Woman's Search for a Cure. We're going to find out about that woman and that search right after our break. We'll be right back with Ms. Faye Hueston.
This is Dentistry Courtney, MD. We become confused about how best to manage your health. It's no wonder. It seems that every time you turn on the television or radio, another expert has yet another suggestion for you to follow that seems to be reasonable enough, but no matter how dutifully you follow the instructions, it just doesn't quite produce the results that you are looking for. If this confusion sounds familiar to you, give us a call at the Center for Complementary Health, where we'll make some sense of the confusion based on a blending of traditional and alternative medicine that we've been perfecting over the last 7 years. We offer metabolic nutrition testing, immune system repair, natural hormone replacement therapy, chelation therapy, cutting-edge allergy correction, and a host of other safe and effective alternative therapies.
Dentist J. Courtney, MD, is located at 3075 Washington Road in McMurray. Phone 724-942-3002.
Want to help your family eat healthier? Instead of learning to discuss tofu with Wondrous Way, how about some real nutritional power? If your family has the typical American palate for fries, pizza, and burgers, giving your family the blessing of good nutrition is a struggle. Fruit of the Spirit is the answer for your family's nutritional needs. Fruit of the Spirit is an all-natural whole fruit puree made from fresh fruits native to the Holy Land with alkalizing minerals. Fruit of the Spirit was 5 years in the formulation, the work of a team of top nutritional experts with independent science to confirm its antioxidant power. 1 ounce a day provides the equivalent of 5 servings of fruits and minerals. Fruit of the Spirit is convenient, affordable, and delicious. Even your picky family will sing the praises of Fruit of the Spirit. Give your loved ones the blessing of good nutrition. Call 1-800-442-3793 for a special promotional offer. Fruit of the Spirit, a blessing for your good health. That's 1-800-442-3793. Call them now, 1-800-442-3793.
Hey, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back once again to AM Impact on Your Health. Heard here on KHB 620 each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 9 o'clock. I'm Dr. Dennis Courtney with you today on this Monday version of the show. And, folks, you are in store for a very interesting ride today as we plot on through the life of a very interesting gal. Unfortunately for her, she had to suffer tremendously to arrive at the point she is today. She was smart enough to keep a diary through that entire time and has written a book that we can all benefit from. Our discussion swings to the life and saga of one Faye Hueston. The book, Silent Enemy, Environmental Illness and One Woman's Search for a Cure. She's our special guest today. Let's say good morning and welcome to you, Faye. Thanks for coming aboard this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
Do me a favor. I get the impression that you're such a petite and meek lady, yet I read this book. You are a go-getter and a fighter. I want to hear you voice a little with a little more oomph behind it because we're having trouble here.
I do have, I'm afraid, a too soft voice. Can you hear me well now?
Yeah, please keep it at that level. We'll be just fine, Faye, because I know there's a lion, there's a tiger in there somewhere. Now, if I could, and as I say, I just had this book in my hand this weekend. I couldn't put it down. I call it a medical thriller because of your documentation throughout this entire time frame and how good it was. You really missed no details. We're on a station and certainly on a program that bespeaks of alternatively minded therapies, and I'd have to say just at the outset, you've tried them all. You're the poster child for all that is out there. I don't think you've missed a thing. We'll find out what that may be in your opinion, but let's start from the rudimentary beginnings. We're back in the 60s as your book opens, and you, although a world liver, not traveler, you've lived all over the place. France, Italy, England. You were born in California, huh?
Yes, I was.
You're a California girl.
I am.
Well, you don't sound like one, Faye. Let's just say that you are tinged with your English accent, which is just gorgeous. One thing about that background of yours, I just have to ask because I don't know how big of a role it played, but it certainly caught my eye. Your adoptive parent, I guess you had your adoptive father. You were with your biological mother and your adoptive father, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But you're a Christian Scientist.
Yes.
And
I'm
very,
raised as a Christian Scientist.
yeah, you're very early on through a pretty terrific bout with some antimicrobial infection. You gave up on Christian Science. And could you just fill in some gaps? Because raised one way and rejecting that is a pretty important part of anybody's life. At least I think so. And you mentioned in your book, played much of a role in any of this that went on after that, you think?
Yes. Well, actually, I go into that in some detail in the book I'm finishing now. But I left the church after I tried to be healed of a very serious illness when I lived in France. And I think I had to break away from religion, and I have great respect for Christian Science, and I'm very glad I was raised that way because we didn't take drugs, I didn't smoke or drink. And I owe a lot of my health, I think, to the religion in which I was raised. But as we grow and as we have experiences, we sometimes have to leave things that were very dear to us when we were young. And I did leave it with regret, but I had to do that to find other ways of healing.
Well said. And one little personal question, because I didn't quite understand. Who is Mary Baker Eddy? Who is she?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Mary Baker Eddy was the founder of Christian Science.
Oh,
She was
okay.
its founder, and she wrote the textbook. And in our church, we read both the Bible and the textbook by Mary Baker Eddy.
All right. Thank you for filling in that blank. Even though you think it's insignificant, it certainly was a query for me.
Oh, no, it's not.
Moving forward then, things go along for you, I'm guessing, in a pretty normal way, but things turn abnormal real fast. You get diagnosed with breast cancer, you undergo mastectomy, and along with that, breast repair and breast implants, which evidently really are at the crux and the start of this entire saga. Do I read that right in terms of at least the role that it may have played in getting you started with this lifelong agony road that you traveled?
Well, it was part of the road. What I didn't realize at the time I had the mastectomy, which was in 1974, was that I was already very toxic with a lot of chemicals in my body, but I wasn't aware of this. And I'm quite sure that the reason my body rejected the silicone implant was because it just said, this is too much, I can't handle it. This is just one more chemical thing that you're putting in my body, and I don't want it. Get it out of here.
Well, you know, you write about you had the 5th surgery. Okay, I think I remember reading.
I'm not hearing you too well.
Oh boy,
I have a little trouble with it.
I usually can be heard quite easy. Can you hear me okay right now?
I can hear you fine now. Thank
All right, I'm going to maybe quit mumbling and be a little more.
No, it's my problem here, but never mind.
All right, never mind with that. At your 5th surgery, you awaken from the surgery, and I catch that something is really awry. You know immediately that something's wrong, and you develop a set of symptoms after that surgery that are with you for quite some time after that. What was it that went wrong, or what was it that you suffered from after that surgery that really, you say you may have had toxins ahead of time, and you really didn't know much about them, but after that point and beyond, you certainly do know that something is awry.
Oh, yes. Well, my symptoms were bizarre, and some of them were very normal, but I don't think one can always judge the cause by symptoms, because I met many people in the clinics I visited who had all kinds of symptoms, yet we were all subject to the same poison. My symptoms were chronic fatigue, headaches, severe headaches, which I never had normally, arthritis, hypersensitivity. It was above all hypersensitivity to everything in the environment.
Hypersensitivity.
That was the main one. I couldn't stand even the smell of flowers.
someone brought me a beautiful bunch of lilies, and I had to put them outside the door because I couldn't tolerate their odor. It became to the point where I really felt I didn't know if I could go on living on this planet.
That sensitive. Also noticed that you developed sciatica after this that lasted for quite a while, and this is in the National Health Service of England, right? That you're undergoing all this.
Yes, but I didn't use national health too much because when I left the church, I had always been partial to alternative treatment. So whenever possible, I used alternative doctors.
Well, the contacts that you had with conventional medicine, which you really abandoned quite early on in all this, kept leading to one conclusion, Faye, and that is, at least from what I can read, that you're nuts, that you are crazy, that these are symptoms that are all psychosomatic, and you wouldn't have any discussion of it. You said, this isn't psychosomatic to me, and you quickly concluded your conventional forays, at least looking for any real help. Do I get the message right?
Yes, that is when I was conventional health at first, but I also went to a couple of conventional private doctors, and they did all the right tests, and I don't want to disparage them because they did the tests that they thought were appropriate, and nothing showed up. So of course they assumed that it was all in my mind and psychosomatic. I got to the point where I was very allergic to that fluid. I knew something was wrong, but nobody could tell me what. And it became a very lonely feeling that I had something nobody in the world had ever had before.
Well, you wouldn't have much of that discussion. I gathered that you attempted to get answers. You say the doctors tested you as they normally would test, but they, finding no real evidence to base any diagnosis on, concluded that this was a psychosomatic and psychiatric-driven set of symptoms. And you were saying, no, I don't think so. And then you move in to the alternative world, and this is now the 70s. You call this is the time where there's the me generation, and you started off on a interesting journey through the use of all of the visualization techniques, the gurus of that age and epoch. Could you quickly summarize all the exposures you had at that time when you were looking to try to correct this by correcting you?
Well, I think when you feel you have a problem, a physical problem, for which there is no known cure, you become very spiritual, not necessarily church-oriented, but I searched every known talk I could find, and I became New Age for a while, and I learned a lot, and it gave me great courage to go on. But what really helped me and what really turned the tide was when a friend told me about a clinical ecology doctor in London who deals exclusively with the environment and environmental illness. And that was really when life started to turn around because she knew what tests she made. And these tests showed finally that I had all these chemicals in my body. It showed which chemicals they were. Very specific things I'd never heard of, like hexachlorobenzene, dieldrin, DDT, and DDE, which are derivatives, which has been, as you know, outlawed in this country and in the UK as well. But it's still being manufactured and sent to the third world. Then they spray it all over their vegetables, which they export back to us. So we're getting it whether we're aware of it or not.
Now, of course, you are talking about Dr. Jean Monroe,
yes,
who really was the beacon of light that started to show you a path to follow that actually did have some concrete benefit for you almost immediately. It was more of a roller coaster ride. We'll get into that in a bit, too, because for every single benefit you obtained, you also had a crash around the corner, too. It was an interesting play of how medicine was help yet can injure, and you described it very well in your book. I'm going to ask you about something that occurs right about this time, because you appear to put a lot of emphasis on it, at least in everything you were doing and how you were interpreting what was happening to you, and that is the use of dowsing. Okay, dowsing became an important part of how you viewed things. Could you make some sense for our listeners as to why you put such a prominent amount of attention, why you paid such an amount of attention to dowsing? Because it is something that dotes your book throughout in terms of how you end up reconciling what you're learning from other sources.
Yes, it takes a lot of time to explain dowsing to someone who doesn't know about it. It's more commonly known as water divining. And as most people know, there are dowsers who find water under the ground. There's no indication why it should be there, but it just is. My body, I didn't realize at the time, but I got to the point where I couldn't sleep in my bed. I'd have to get up at 2 or 3 in the morning with a headache and go into the other room. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. And then I was put in touch with a dowser by somebody who knew a lot about this. And he came and doused my apartment. And he found that I was reacting, this sounds very strange, I was reacting to a polluted stream that was 75 feet under my bed, under the ground actually.
Wow.
My bed was right over it. And without my being aware of it, my body was being affected by the pollution that arises. I don't quite know how. A lot of this I don't understand, but it happened. And so that launched me onto this. And the dowser found that the reason I was reacting, I should say, is because my body, my immune system had collapsed then. And I wouldn't have been sensitive if I had a proper immune system. So when our immune system becomes compromised, we become exposed to all kinds of things. And I think people who aren't even aware that they have chemical sensitivity can wonder why they are sensitive to things that they may not even be aware of.
Well, you know, the issue of dowsing, where you had all concluded based on, I guess it's this Mr. McManaway and the gentleman Clyde Beeden. I got all the names right, I'm pretty sure. At least that a stream 75 feet below, which nobody even knew would be there. I mean, I'm guessing this is in an area of the country where, were you in the city at the time? I mean,
oh, it's in London.
It's right in the middle of London, and yet you knew that there was a stream that deep, and the pollutants that run through it were affecting you 75 feet above it. That's a pretty interesting. That shows some sensitivity beyond belief, actually, huh?
Well, I should say that the dowser came to my house. He happened to be one of the best dowsers in England. He's been the past president of the British Dowsers. His name was Faye. And he found that I was so sensitive that he used me as his guinea pig for future experiments. But he was trying to find a way to protect people from these influences. And, of course, I was very eager to help him do that. And he was quite an amazing man. But I go into that in much greater detail in my next book.
Oh, okay. So there's part 2. I imagine you mentioned it once before. I can't wait to see the next one. A thing that I labeled in the book I was reading, I just put little mark and I said, an awakening occurs here. And I'll ask you to talk about it a bit, because it really sends you off on a completely different path, one that really then gets to the crux of this issue. And you're talking about visiting, New York City, and you're away from home. You're actually not doing too bad symptom-wise, but then you overindulge. You get to some of what you called your addictions: chocolate, coffee, cheese, and immediately you are not feeling too well, and you make this conclusion that it's something in the food, and up to that point, you had never considered it, or at least I can't find any reference to that. Was that pretty much an awakening for you?
Well, yes, it was the final. I'd had hints of this, but I didn't want to pay any attention. That's my chocolate and my addiction. But that's true. That's exactly what happened.
And so, by identifying that something could be in the foods, then something can literally be anywhere, and it doesn't have to be a food. And so, boy, this turns out to be a road that has to be well churned. And it's at that point where, meeting Dr. Monroe as you did, you start to come under the care of someone who is very familiar with this kind of a problem. Talk to us a bit about Dr. Jean Monroe, who started to turn the light on to guide you. We don't have Jean Monroe here, but we have doctors like Jean Monroe here. What kind of a doctor was she? How did you come by her? And what were the first experiences you had with her that got you on the pathway to getting this thing identified?
Jean Monroe is a wonderful woman and a very courageous woman. So she, all her life, well, not her life, her husband became very ill with environmental illness, which was what set her on this path, because she was a normal, regular doctor before. And she had to defend herself against the British medical establishment, just as I think alternative doctors in this country have often to do against our medical establishment. And I have such respect for her, even though her treatment had helped me enormously for 2 years. It wasn't the final answer, but I am so grateful that I met her, because through her I learned what was wrong with me. I learned so much about environmental illness, and I owe her a great debt.
You also what?
A debt of gratitude.
Oh, okay. Excuse me. All right. You must have turned away for a moment. We lost you. That debt of gratitude, I can understand and appreciate why moving down what she evidently was an expert in was allergies, okay? And you use desensitization processes that are pretty common, and using homeopathic solutions. And literally, as I would gather and had an image in my own mind, a large number of the patients just sat around each day finding the allergen they were going to be working on for that day or those next couple of days and coming up with a serum or a treatment, literally one treatment for each allergy. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's right. It was like the vaccination. They would find which thing we were most allergic to, sensitive to. It could be a food or a chemical or anything, really. And then that vaccination was done. These allergens were put into a bottle, and you vaccinated yourself each day, and that enabled you to come in contact with the things to which you were sensitive without this overreaction. It was wonderful in letting people survive. I don't want to say survive, but letting people live their lives normally. But it did not get to the basic problem, which for me was getting chemicals out of my system. But I met many patients at the clinic for whom this made an enormous change, and they were able at last to live normal, healthy lives.
Yeah, I was going to say that the accumulation of people at that clinic had to have a double-edged sword. One, you got in contact with people who were equally as afflicted as you, and I'm not so sure that up until that time you could be in contact with those people, but they were all there, boy. It was quite an array of individuals who had as miserable a life as you did, suffer from all sorts of symptoms, all based on a similar process. So on one hand, it seemed like you were home. You were among friends. On the other hand, each of you with a different background and having different allergens that exposed and set you off was making each of you unique and different at the same time. So you're with friends, yet you have completely different issues with which to deal with medically. How would that interplay play out for you? Did you feel great about being with those people? At least as much of negativity as may go around that room, I don't know if that's a fair word, there was solace in being in a group of people of like-mindedness. Fair enough said?
Yes, it was gratifying to know that you weren't the only person in the world. I would like to say that in all the different clinics I went to erroneously, I met many people who were far more damaged than I was and had every kind of symptom you can think of in the world. So symptoms really are that important because we're all different. So each of us will react differently to perhaps the same cause, but what we all shared was a co-sensitivity to chemicals. And that's basic, the bottom line, so to speak. We were poisoned by the chemicals in our food, in our air, in our water. But we all reacted differently, and we all made lots of progress.
Now, just one question from a clinician, as a doctor that I am. It appears that the solutions that were being used in that clinic were homeopathic. And there was a series of dilutions that you moved through in order to find your, what'd you call it, the dose? What kind of dose were you looking for? With the,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, the dose, the neutralizing dose.
That's right.
Is the term that's being used to describe your dose. And as you mentioned, each dose is more dilute. With each advancing dose, you're actually getting less and less of the substance. This is a basic tenet of homeopathy, as you well know by now. And the most reactive and the most problematic of those dilutions is going to be the one with the least amount of the substance in it. It's going to be the most potent of all. That is a concept that very much is difficult for people to grasp. How did you grasp that yourself? And did you find it to be difficult in order to appreciate why less of something actually can provoke more of a response?
I'm not sure I've grasped it yet.
It is a difficult concept, is it? Is it not?
It's very difficult, and I just accept things. If they make me better and if they help, I don't question too much. I think, well, there's something in this, and I'm going to benefit from it as much as I can. And the neutralizing dose, which, as you point out, is often the smallest dose, which makes no sense in normal medicine. It would be the one that turned off your symptoms. Now, I don't know why that is, but it works. And so I've had proof that it works. Not everything is the solution to all problems, but that certainly does work for, it also works for animals. So it isn't sensitive. I mean, animals.
Yeah, that's well put. That's true.
So if they respond, as anyone who takes care of horses knows, then there is something in it, even if we don't completely understand it.
Well, let me ask you about another thing. That once you got into this, you didn't set down anything that you had acquired previously and not refer to you and something that you did at that clinic that literally just about wiped out the clinic, if I read this correctly, and that's your use of a pendulum. You literally caused upheaval by bringing a pen. Talk to us a bit about this pendulum and why it was cherished by you as an important tool, and then what havoc you caused when you brought the pendulum to the clinic.
I still don't understand this, but at that time I was already working very much with the Dowser side beat. And so I took a pendulum with me wherever I went because I was so sensitive.
What's the pendulum? Talk about what is the pendulum?
Oh, well, it can be any object. You can put a ring on the end of a string, and use it as a pendulum. And if you swing it back and forth, and if you ask it a mental question, say for a yes or no answer, and you establish which is your yes swing, which is your no swing, it will give you the answer to most questions. A lot of this depends on how much practice you've done and how naturally it works for you. But I took a regular pencil that had a little bob at the end, and I kept it in my purse because if I was sitting in what was called, now this is very complicated. As I say, I go into this more in my
the next book.
If I was sitting in energy, in an energy line is everywhere. They're part of the Earth's natural envelope, so to speak. If I was sitting in one, and these were crossed energy lines, they're very beneficial except they cross each other, and they become broken by the things man has done to the environment. I'll go into that later. But if I was sitting in a crossed energy line, I wanted to move my chair away because I could feel it, and it bothered me. So I had sitting there, and this was at the clinic, having my vaccinations done, and we were waiting for Dacron. Dacron was the next chemical we were going to be injected with. And it took so long because there was only one nurse on duty that day. It was a small group, and there were only 5 of us. And I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be wonderful if I could establish my neutralizing dose by dowsing for it, which would be very quick, and it would save time, and I wouldn't have to wait for each day. So I didn't want to be ostentatious. I didn't want anyone to notice, so I surreptitiously took my pencil out of my bag and put one hand on this box, the open box of Dacron vials in all the different amounts of homeopathic conspiracies. And with my other hand, I put my pendulum into a swing, and I asked Nancy, what is my neutralizing dose for Dacron? And I was watching the swings and counting them when the nurse suddenly said, put that pendulum away. And she was so angry about it. And I looked at her and I felt terrible. And she said that she was attending two patients who were sitting next to her. And she said that her patient had gone suddenly into a negative reaction and that it was the fault of my swinging of the pendulum. And I thought, this is crazy. It can't be. I wasn't even thinking about it. And anyway, she said they had experienced in the past that if someone uses the pendulum in the clinic for good purposes, that it caused some kind of problem. So, of course, I put it away and I felt dreadful, terrible. And she was giving the patients turn-off remedies to stop their reaction.
Because they were all reacting all around you, weren't they?
Well, just the two of us, not the others who were putting further away. So something that I was doing was, and I now believe, although it was very puzzling, I believe that what I was somehow doing with the pendulum was maybe stirring up the toxic aura that my body was emanating from. I was so full of that. And maybe this spread to the woman next to me and affected her, although these things fit into an area which I can't be very positive about because it's still very iffy.
Yeah, it's a concept that's difficult even for me to appreciate, but I was taken aback by how people in the room were affected, how people who were in the building, I mean floors away, were affected. If I remember the doctor who talked to you about patients 1 or 2 floors higher than you.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, oh, don't forget about that. That's more amazing than the fact that the people who were in the room responding.
Yes, I had put the pendulum away, and about 20 minutes later, the Dr. Monroe's assistant or co-doctor came into the room, came up to me and said, I must ask you not to use the pendulum because I was on the floor above. It was directly above. And he said, I was treating a patient above, and all of a sudden, she asked, is somebody here using a pendulum? And I said no, because I didn't think anybody was. And she went into some kind of negative reaction, which he had to attend to. And he said, I didn't know this was a pendulum until I came down to this floor. And the nurse told me that you had been using it at that time. Well, I felt mortified because the last thing I ever wanted to do
was harm others. That's right.
I beg your pardon?
It was the last thing you want to do, be harm somebody else.
Yes. And it was a very mortifying experience, which I still don't understand.
I'm having trouble understanding it too, but the fact that it can happen is what I wanted the listener to appreciate. Swinging a bob at the end of a string. In you hypersensitives, which is what we're going to have to call you, my young lady, okay, has influences over you that we mere mortals don't sense. We don't have a response to. But that it has a response to others is the fascinating part about this story that makes it the medical thrill that it really is. And so I had to bring it up. I had to ask you about the pendulum, and almost wiping out the clinic, young lady, was not a good day for you.
Can I say just one quick thing?
Sure.
The same thing happened today, because now I am as free of chemicals as I think you can be, though none of us is kosher. If I did that today, that wouldn't happen, because I'm quite sure that in some way I was
your disease was being
transmitted
into your... There's an interesting explanation. You could be right, huh? You could be right. We don't know. I'm fascinated. Okay, we'll move on. The experience with the Dr. Monroe's clinic ultimately led to really one of the best diagnostic workups whenever NASA tests became available, and you could really get minute, minuscule amounts of some pretty harmful chemicals You finally get tested. You get things like down to 1 part per trillion of things that are in your system: DDT, dieldrin, hepatochloric, epoxyate. All these names. Let's just say that DDT, DDD, all the Ds. You had all the Ds. You had everything. But at least you had a name for them, and you could go about setting out a course to rid yourself of them from this particular approach. Fair enough said? How did it all culminate with could you say allergy correction wasn't ultimately what led to your cure? It was a part which got you started. It'd be interesting. It's the first part of your journey. And how did it ultimately conclude?
Well, Dr. Burr's treatment showed me what was wrong with me. And the test, actually, that she did exists here in the States. At that time, it was very new. You can, your patients go on to it, not patients, because they have to review. But there's a lab called Metamatrix, which does the same test I had, which is called for fluorinated pesticides. But we can go into that later, pick that up on the web. But at least that showed what my problem was. Once I had a diagnosis, then I could try to find a cure. And while her treatment helped enormously, I reached a plateau where it no longer seemed to work. And I had to move on. And then, fortunately, I had a dear friend in London who had been cured of malignant melanoma by the Hueston therapy, which is in Mexico. And she had been given up by her doctor after 2 operations. She heard of the Hueston therapy. This was in the late 70s, when it was just starting out in Mexico. She went there for 3 weeks. None of us thought she was going to survive. She came back, did it for 2 years. She's older than I am, and she now travels all over Europe talking about the Hueston therapy and trying to help other people in her way, just as I hope my book will help others mine.
Tell us about the Max and Charlotte Hueston down in Mexico, which is ultimately where they were scooted off to because they couldn't practice the way they wanted to here. So they had to go over to Mexico. What was it about the Max Hueston approach that you felt really got you on your road to cure?
Oh, well, it is. First of all, it is wholly nutrition with a few added supplements. There are no drugs, and it is, I think Dr. Hueston was a genius. He evolved his therapy in the 30s and came to this country before the war and was, of course, blocked at every stage of his effort to practice here by the usual sources. But to get to the therapy, it is all based on organic food, organic vegetables, and primarily organic juices, vegetable juices. The reason it's in Mexico is because you're not allowed to treat cancer in California, which is where they get all of the organic vegetables, except through surgery and radiation and chemo, as you know.
Sure.
So go to the family clinic. The most inspiring experience I've ever had. I was the only one there with environmental illness. Everyone else there had terminal cancer.
Right.
Because people usually only end up there when they've been given up by their doctors. And I met so many people, and people I still know who have been cured. But the therapy, you go on it the minute you arrive. They start bringing you organic vegetable juice every hour on the hour.
Juicing is a big part of the Hueston thing. Yes.
Oh, it is major. All the food is organic, and I never had so much food thrown at me. I got to the point where I thought I would love a day of fast. But of course, it was all wonderful health-giving food and coffee enemas.
That's right. The other part is detoxification. So organic nutrition and detoxification with those coffee ground enemas are a mainstay of the treatment and the mainstay of any program. Really, you've got to detoxify. So the two go hand in hand. How long of a time did it take with Hueston and its approach? And so you were there for a certain period of time, then you went home and could practice it. How long did it take before you really were able to rid yourself of these chemicals and get a new set of nutritional components into your body?
Well, I forgot to say that my friend urged me to do the therapy. My friend who had cancer, because she said it does two things. It detoxifies the body, and it rebuilds the immune system. And I knew these were the two things I needed, which is why I went to I stayed at the clinic for 3 weeks, got into the rhythm of the therapy, got to know what to do, and then I came back to London. And it's very intensive, and it's very difficult if you don't have someone to help you. And I did engage someone who made all the food and the juices, because when you start detoxifying, you can be very chemicals that went into your body bit by bit over the years start coming out of your body fat into your bloodstream in big amounts, and your healing reactions can be very, very difficult.
Yeah, you have to be prepared for that because they're sequestered for so long. When you finally let them out, they cause havoc.
Oh yes, and they come out much worse perhaps than they were before. But at the same time, when you're doing this therapy, you know that that's a sign that the therapy is working because it's getting this out of the body. I did the therapy, to answer your question, the usual time, which is about 2 years. It used to be 18 months, but the environment has become so toxic that it now takes longer than it did in birth.
So over about 2 years it took to completely rebuild that immune system, which, if anything, your immune system was so super sensitive. You had to rewire the thing so it would be reactive as many of us, the rest of us are, which isn't so sensitive. But the immune system had gone awry, no doubt about it, through using organic. By the way, getting organic vegetables in England, is that easy or hard to do?
It's probably easier now because I believe there's Whole Foods in London. But at my time, it was very hard.
Yes, I'm imagining it would be.
Just one person in Covent Garden who dealt with this, and he was a bit of a bandit, so he took advantage of persecution. But it was hard, but it can be done. And of course, over those 2 years, as I improved, I gradually reduced the number of coffee and amazing juices, because as you improve, you don't need that initial onslaught to try to attack the problem. So, but I'm on a modified thirst, which actually it's the way I like to live and the way I like to eat. So it's not. I don't consider it a therapy.
Yeah, it's not a therapy anymore. It's part of your constitution. That's
my daily life.
That's your daily life.
Juices a day, and I only take the coffee if I feel toxic. Occasionally I will get the beginnings of a mild headache, and if I take a coffee enema, it's gone within 15 minutes, and I'm not pumping my body full of chemicals to form those headaches. It's wonderful. It wouldn't work if I had a brain tumor, but if you get a toxic headache, it does.
Now, you and I'm going to ask you rather than tell you, because as a doctor, I'm seeing so many patients who won't settle for the explanation by the conventional medical community that these symptoms that they're feeling are psychosomatic. I don't know how many patients there are out there that succumb and just say, okay, I'm crazy, give me the drugs, because they certainly would be dispensed with a lot of psychiatric meds. How many people out there are actually people who are suffering from environmental toxins as opposed to actually having psychiatric disorders is a number I don't even know how to come up with, but I'm guessing that you are unique, or maybe you aren't unique, or how do you look at it? People who are listening to us right now having symptoms like this and not giving up, as opposed to those that give up, just throw their hands up in the air and say, okay, I'll take the psychiatric drugs and I'll let your diagnosis be my diagnosis, even though I'm going to be droned for the rest of my life. That's an interesting line that has to be approached and either crossed or repelled from. How do you view that conundrum?
Well, of course, it's much easier to take a pill, isn't it? We all want the easy road. Nobody wants to have to.
You never did.
Oh, I did for a while, long ago. But I must say that you have to be determined. You have to have a certain amount of discipline in your life. But if you want to get well, there are prices to be paid. But the ultimate reward in health, in a totally different aspect of how we should live our lives is so worth the effort. But I think if people only realize that when they take pills, they're just adding to the problem. Because it is my belief, and I could be wrong, that apart from genetic problems, which we all have, that's another issue, I think most of us, the ills we have, come from all the toxins that we can't avoid in our daily life. And it's not even our fault. The chemicals that are in cleaning products under our sink, when we fill up our car with gas and breathe in all this, when we drink water that is treated with fluoride, everything that is in the air and in our so-called civilized life is really harmful to our bodies. And Dr. Gerson said the soil is our external metabolism. And if we poison the soil in which we grow our vegetables and on which we depend to give us life-giving foods, we are poisoning our body. We don't realize it, which makes it so much harder to accept and understand.
Now, this book that you've written, by the way, please tell our listeners how to get this book. Let me take a moment. Is there website information, any telephone number information you want to let us know about so that they can get a copy of this book? I call it a medical thriller. Folks, I couldn't put it down. You'll do the same. How can they get it?
Right. It's called Silent Enemy. And my website is silentenemy.net, not .com.
.net.
.net. And it can be found at Amazon, Borders, Barnes & Noble, any outlet will have it. It can be ordered.
And there is another one coming, huh? When's it going to be coming out?
So I have two coming. One is about adoption and all of that, and the other deals a great deal with dowsing because I had many other experiences in that field, but it's just much too much to put in one book.
Oh, I could see the emphasis was by you placed on dowsing. I'm glad to hear you come out with a book. I'll get that one too. I thank you so much for the copy you've given me. And once again, silentenemy.net is how they can get the book through your website, or Amazon.com does carry it, correct?
Yes.
Okay. We'll be looking for, can we expect another Faye Hueston book to be available to us?
Well, I hope it'll be, perhaps this spring, too soon.
All right. I won't hold you to this. I won't hold you to it, but at least it gives us all an idea.
It's almost finished, so it will be soon.
All right. Now, the book that you have written, you've dedicated to a pretty famous person, Rachel Carson. Rachel Carson, who I don't know if you really know, but I'm talking to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And Rachel Carson was born and raised about 15 miles from where I'm speaking to you now in Springdale, Pennsylvania.
Oh, really?
We all know Rachel Carson and her Silent Spring. We're very proud of Rachel Carson coming from the Pittsburgh area, but you devoted this entire book to her. Tell us about your reverence to this lady.
Well, as maybe some of your younger patients might not know, she wrote a book called Silent Spring, which was published in 1962. She was a marine biologist, and her book actually started the environment, although she wasn't the first to write about the dangers we were doing to our planet. But she wrote more beautifully and more authoritatively than anyone else. And she warned us, in Silent Spring, of the dangers we were inflicting on the planet and ourselves by our thoughtless abuse of chemicals. And I named my book, I called my book Silent Enemy, because she sounded the warning. And my experience, I feel, is an example of what happens when you ignore that. Rachel Carson is one of the saints in my pantheon. I just am so grateful to her for awakening. And she wrote such a beautiful book. I urge your readers to read it. I'm a reader. I urge your patients to read her book.
Well, I do too, and we are quite proud that she hailed from this area. Published first at the age of 10 years old. What a brilliant lady she really was.
Oh, she was.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. Now, here we are. We're coming down this home stretch, and I am looking forward to what I didn't know was possible. There'll be more books coming. But you got a number of people listening to you out there on a station that every day, all day. It's a really unique station, Faye, because every show after another is all based on alternative approaches, for which I said at the onset, you're the poster child for. I don't know. I couldn't put a number on how many alternative approaches you pursued. I'd like to know what was left. Is there anything left you haven't tried? That's my first question. Is there anything at all that you haven't tried?
Oh, I know of several things, but I didn't need to, and not everything works for everyone.
All right. That's fair enough.
You know, there are other doctors, alternative doctors, who have other cures for cancer. I just didn't, of course, I wasn't there for cancer, but it seems the alternative method isn't a channel for just this disease or that. If it restores your immune system, you are cured of whatever the problem is, whether it's environmental illness or cancer or lupus or whatever.
Very good point. To those that are listening to us now who may be suffering, who may have symptoms, as we come down and bongos are in the background signaling our time out of here, what are the final words you want to leave for those people who I think that book that you've written is intended for?
Well, it took us millions of years to evolve and adapt to our environment. Yet in the past 60 years, we've changed that environment irrevocably, flooding it with toxic chemicals. And they're in our water, our food, and in the very air we breathe. And they're threatening our health. I don't know if we can turn back now. But we have to realize that this is what is causing so much of our illness, and we're going to have to deal with it and try to purify our body. Detoxification is, I think, the only solution to our toxic environment.
Well put. Great book, great read. I'm looking forward to the next. We'll hopefully bring her back. Our paths are going to cross, young lady. I could feel they're going to come. Somewhere they're going to cross. I'll salute you at that point personally. Until then, down in North Carolina, thanks for allowing us to interrupt your day today. Keep on rating, Miss Hueston.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Silent Enemy, written by Faye Hueston. This is Dr. Dennis Courtney with Faye Hueston saying so long for AM Impact on Your Health.
AM Impact on Your Health is sponsored by Dennis J. Courtney, MD, Director of the Courtney Medical Group, located at 3075 Washington Road in McMurray, Pennsylvania. For more information or to make an appointment, call 724-942-3002. That's 724-942-3002. For Dennis J. Courtney, MD.
No, we're not that far away.
Here's what's happening from KHB. The Yukon-Croatian Lodge will hold its last indoor lamb picnic on Sunday, November 21st from 2 to 6 p.m. The Randolph Band will provide live entertainment featuring Croatian music. The Croatian Lodge is located along Union Street in Yukon. For more information, call 724-454-6667.
At Nature's Way, we know eating the right foods can make a great improvement to your health, especially if you have food allergies. That's why we stock a large selection of food for people with special diets. Whether it's dairy-free, wheat-free, or gluten-free, Nature's Way has made it easy. Now you can find these special products together in one section of our store. Nature's Way also has color-coded shelf tags, so you can find the items you need in the cooler and freezer departments. We'll even supply you with a list of products we stock for your special dietary requirements. So if you have food allergies, stop in and ask for a free listing of foods for your diet. You'll be amazed at the variety of choices available to you at Nature's Way, your complete health food store. For more information, call Nature's Way at 724-836-3524. Nature's Way is located in Greensburg on the corner of Hyden and Mount Pleasant. Nature's Way, your complete health food store. 724-836